let's say that you are a Christian, a Catholic of the old-fashioned medieval type, who believes that you've got an individual soul with free will and that you're under responsibility to God to obey his law, and that if you don't, the most disastrous consequences imaginable will befall you. You will fry in hell forever. There's no evidence whatsoever that believing in that made people any more virtuous than they are today. None at all. Indeed, clergy who believed in all this owned whorehouses and all kinds of things. They were just as contemptuous of law and order as anybody could be now. And part of the reason was, of course, that the threat of hell was an unimaginable penalty, like the H-bomb. It's just too big to think about, and really brings justice into disrespect because it uses such crude and clumsy methods. You know, it's like using a steam hammer to drive in tacks. Responsibility is a thing like a nice face, which you either have or haven't. Certain backgrounds, certain interests, certain awarenesses of relationship create responsibility in some human beings. And they live that way, not because they are giving themselves sermons and telling themselves all the time that they ought to be responsible. It's because they're intelligent enough to see that being responsible makes things very much easier for everybody all around. That's all there is to it. And, of course, that's all is a big all. But you won't, what I'm saying is, the people who are frightened that other people will abandon responsibility never did have any way of thinking that would guarantee that people would be responsible. There is no such guarantee. If there were, we should be automata. Now, I want to switch to another aspect of illusion. The quickness of the hand deceives the eye. And that is, of course, the great illusion of what we call matter. Density, impenetrability, opacity. I find it hard to talk about the illusion of matter because I'm a materialist. That is to say, I like material. And so I may seem to you to be quite self-contradictory. For example, a wine should have body. Pure alcohol doesn't. And it's terribly important in human character for there to be a blend of materialism and mysticism, between sensuality and spirituality. You see, people who are purely sensuous and materialistic get very boring. You can fill your lives with all good things, with Alfa Romeos and hi-fis and wonderful cameras and girls with beautiful bodies and Chris Crafts and dry martinis and Chanel No. 5, you know. And after a while, if that's all you've got, it gets sickening and the bottoms begin to feel like plastic and the martinis taste like medicine. And somehow, you get a distaste for life, and even for mountains and trees and waters. And then on the other hand, the purely spiritual approach to things is too rarefied, too earnest, too abstract, too purely Euclidean. And the people who are intensely spiritual and don't have any sensuality are always desperately serious, colorless, lacking in humor, and never are able to meet one as man to man with a kind of a friendly leer in the eye. That's terribly important. They live at a level of frantic intensity. I see these two extremes need each other. Say, spirituality needs a beer and a loud burp, and sensuality needs a rough blanket and a hard bed and a cold night with the stars, to wonder about. The sensualist as such, the materialist as such, has no wonder, and the mystic, the pure mystic, has no body. He's pure alcohol. Spirit. So, if then one should say that material is an illusion, this seems to be selling out to the spirit people and to the mystics. And so Christian scientists are, generally speaking, as personalities, totally lacking in materialism. They're prissy and lacking in color, and their churches are very, very disagreeable. They're all reading desks, and they're too bookish, and they have no ritual, no ceremonies, no verve, you see? It's all cerebral. And likewise, when people get the wrong idea about Hinduism or Buddhism, they go in for this same ultra-mysticism. They start disbelieving in all material pleasures as crutches. And it's very bad to have crutches, you see. You shouldn't take aspirin when you've got a headache. You shouldn't wear glasses. You shouldn't show dependence on anything. You mustn't like your food too much, because that's becoming gluttonous. So you eat very plain food, which is not spiced, and you eat it out of a sense of duty. That is to keep the body functioning. You drink only water because other drinks might cause certain dependencies and give you too much pleasure. And because the idea is, you see, you've got to control your mind and keep it absolutely calm and still so that you are not dependent on matter. And that's altogether the wrong approach because, it is a game you can play. It is one of these possible things. You can play the Jehovah's Witness game. You can play the three-seed of the Spirit Baptist game. All these are various things which you can play, just as you can take up a hobby for bridge or fishing or something like that. But what happens is, you see, that the notion that the material world is an illusion is turned into a judgment of value. If it's an illusion, therefore it's bad. I ought not to be under this illusion. Well, the reality of the matter is that if you see